Well, let me ask you this. You've obviously covered Caitlin for a while now. What's the most surprising thing that you've learned about her?
I think because I was watching so closely, like so many people, just watching on TV mostly and the Iowa games and what have you, I felt like I got to know her and some of her teammates pretty well through social media,
Sure.
but certainly her sense of humor, being around her. I mean, I had access to practices, exclusive access to some practices with the Indiana Fever last year in August and September, and she's goofy, she's jumping around, she's funny. They're all jumping on top of her. There was one moment where she's literally lying on the floor on the court, and Katie Lou Samuelson, a teammate at the time, was on top of her, and Caitlin's trying to tap out like big time wrestling to get out, have Katie Lou jump off of her back and let her up. Almost like like the kid's sister, as you would see other players kind of making sure to tackle or move her away from the ref, because of the of Caitlin is can be very intense on the court. Understandably, I deal with all that, and this is, by the way, an unauthorized biography, which sounds ominous, but it's not. It's what you want. It's no holds barred. It's journalistic. I'm able to tell you what I saw, what I witnessed, what I report, my interviews, what I found out, and you get a full picture of Caitlin Clark and the energy and the excitement and the anger sometimes and kind of losing it sometimes on the court, and how her teammates will pull her back and then she starts laughing. So that was interesting to me to see that sense of humor, that goofiness in some ways that she has, that is so endearing to her teammates and of course to fans around the country, frankly, fans around the world.
Yeah.
So there's that, I think, and then just how she answers questions.
Yeah.
I've covered NFL teams, Super Bowls, Olympics, Wimbledon's, Tiger Woods, as I said, throughout golf, for years. And you can easily see when an athlete is done with an interview. They're sick of the questions. They're done. They want to give a short answer. Caitlin Clark almost always goes on and on with her answer, looks you in the eye, gives you some thoughts, then goes off on a tangent to give you more quotes and more thoughts. Just incredibly generous with her time with the media. And these were not softball questions I was asking her. I was asking her about her behavior on the court. I was asking her about politics after she liked the Taylor Swift post that was all about voting for in the election last year, the presidential election, but also endorsing as Taylor Swift did, endorsing Kamala Harris for president. And I asked Caitlin Clark, was she going to be planning to endorse Kamala Harris for president? And so, those kinds of questions. And she just goes on and answers them. Again, I cannot stress enough, Doug, 22 going on 40 or 50, the maturity, the responsibility, the understanding of what is riding on her shoulders. Oh, she puts Tiger Woods to shame. She puts almost every male athlete to shame. And frankly, almost every female athlete, in terms of just day in and day out, often being interviewed 3 times a day at the shoot around, before the game, after the game, then usually just before and after the game. And the way she would give her time. Again, I've done this for a long, long time, and I have never seen an athlete quite like her be so generous with her time and so understanding of the magnitude of the moment, and that she is the one, and that the WNBA and women's sports need her to be that person, and accepting of that mantle and running with it and really seeming to enjoy it.
Right. What kind of welcome did she get when she gets to Indianapolis and she's part of the team? What was it like with how she interacted, or how did her fellow teammates interact with her? What was your sense of what was going on there?
Yeah, I think it was very good. A lot of people want to make this about, race and focus, and there are issues there, and I deal with all of that, of
Yeah.
course, in our game. But wanting to make it that her teammates didn't like her,
Yeah.
um, they really, everything I saw, they liked her a lot. And I've got the story of Erica Wheeler, the veteran, a Black woman, played at Rutgers, starting guard for the Indiana Fever. The moment that Caitlin Clark is drafted, Erica Wheeler has now lost her starting job. And yet it's Erica Wheeler leaping for joy. And when at the moment at the draft watch party in the arena at Gainbridge Fieldhouse, and also then becomes her big sister and gets her away from trouble on the court and stands in the way, gets in the way of the refs so that there might not be another technical foul.
Right.
And that's Erica Wheeler, just loving being that big sister, that friend, as she said, first day of school, where you need someone to be the friend. That was what Erica Wheeler did with Caitlin Clark. But Aaliyah Boston, the back and forth that they still do, even with Caitlin Clark being injured.
Right.
You're amazing. No, you're amazing. Caitlin Clark started that
Right.
as they do a quick have a moment together on the bench. I'm sure so many people have seen that. If not, you can Google it and find it. And it's really wonderful. And that, as Aaliyah Boston told me this for the book, she said that was all Caitlin's idea. Caitlin started that idea. They do it every game. And they still do it every game. And that's what's, just fantastic about Caitlin Clark as a teammate. So, there was concern because the Kenny Carter hit and there was no enforcer necessarily at that moment. It was a weird moment. It was way down away from the bench. Aaliyah Boston already had 4 fouls. She did not want to get a technical on a 5th foul or get tossed out of the game if they had a big fight right there. So a lot of the male-dominated mainstream sports media wanted to see more. I deal with all that in the book, talk about that Kennedy Carter hit, the cheap shots.
Yep.
I call the chapter hip check.
Yeah.
But also how ridiculous it would have been if they'd all gotten thrown out of the game. They needed to win the game desperately. Caitlin Clark kept her composure, as she often does when she is, blindsided and hit by Kennedy Carter, or this year by Marina Mabrey. Caitlin Clark went and sunk a free throw. Turns out that Indiana won that game over Chicago by 1 point. That was the difference. So, but yeah, in terms of what I was around and the people I saw, obviously, Lexi Hull, Katie Lou Samuelson, and of course this year, Sophie Cunningham being the enforcer. She did take on that role. But it is a majority Black team. And, if anyone wants to make this about race, which we all, in this society, we certainly hear a lot about that in our polarized country against the backdrop of race and politics and Donald Trump's, presidency, all the things that go into that. Well, again, my reporting, and I looked at everything and covered everything for this book. I just did not see a hatred of Caitlin Clark that there are people out there that seem to want to find and want to see. Well, I did not find it. Quite the opposite. They're thrilled to be her teammate. They're thrilled to be on the receiving end of those passes. And Doug, Caitlin Clark cannot do every gas station opening and every supermarket opening and grocery store and every event. So a lot of these Indiana Fever players get to go and go to the schools and go to the events and go to the grand openings. And I'm guessing that they make, there's a fee involved. There's an honorarium. These players are making money because Caitlin Clark cannot do everything in Indiana. So it's an incredible payday. You get exposure, you get hits, you get all new followers, as Sophie Cunningham has found out, as all the players have found out, that their Instagram and their TikTok, views are so much more than they would have been in other teams. So there's a lot of positives if you're playing in Indiana as a teammate of Caitlin Clark's.
Wow. Let me ask you, in basketball, it seems like there are at least, 5 significant mentors in Caitlin Clark's life. Starts with her father, Brent Clark, who had her playing basketball at a very, very young age. I'm thinking about her high school coach. If I'm correct, her name was Kristen Meyer. I'm thinking her coach at Iowa, Lisa Bluter. Obviously, her 2 favorite coaches, Christine Sides and now Stephanie White. What's the impact of each of these individuals on Caitlin Clark? How do you see it?
Yeah, each one obviously has had quite an impact. And I interviewed I've interviewed all of them. Stephanie White more last season with the Connecticut Sun, but I'll try to get her, for the actually for the paperback of the book, which will come out in May. Hardcover is still obviously available. It's selling great,
Sure.
and quite a discount, I think, still on Amazon for people that are trying to, get more copies. And I'll do book plates for anyone to sign personalized. People can find me easily to do that. I'm happy to do that. But anyway, talk to all of them. So, I'd say even going back to, obviously the high school coach, Kristen Meyer,
Yeah.
would definitely, as she's told me in the book, if Caitlin was misbehaving, she'd bring her out and talk to her and say, hey, when I say misbehaving, getting angry, there was no foul call.
Sure.
On one hand, she says, you could probably call a foul on every play because people couldn't guard Caitlin Clark. So she was being fouled a lot. But can the ref call in a high school game? Can you call a foul every play? Well, that would, that turn it into a 3 or 4 hour game. You don't want to do that.
Right.
So She'd sit her down and talk to her about, hey, don't spend a lot of time worried about this. We need you back on defense. Let's have positive energy, focus on the things you want to focus on. Yeah, of course, the AAU coach, Dixon Jensen, who said that, who's quoted throughout, he's a quote machine and he's wonderful. And he talks all about how, Caitlin Clark, just the magic of Caitlin and how by playing up a couple years, meaning that, as an eighth grader, she's playing with 10th graders. She learned so much and also playing against boys. She played against boys much longer than most girls do. And basically she was playing until like, about fifth, sixth grade against boys. And they're tougher, they're stronger, they're bigger, says Dixon Jensen in the book. Also, he says they're a little bit meaner, which I love that quote. The boys were meaner, a little meaner, and that toughened Caitlin Clark up. And then, of course, Lisa Bluter, letting Caitlin Clark be Caitlin Clark, understanding you want her to run the offense, you don't want to limit her shots. If Caitlin Clark had gone to other places, she committed a soft commit to Notre Dame. She wouldn't have been Caitlin Clark. She would have been Caitlin Clark the way that we know her now, of course. She wouldn't have been able to shoot as much. And that's just because there would have been other players on the team that would have been not equally talented, no, but also would have been quite talented. And so now you've got a situation where you've got Iowa, the leadership of Lisa Bluter, and also the understanding of Title IX, how amazing Title IX is. And what a great, the lessons of Title IX that Lisa Bluter wanted her players to learn. And Caitlin Clark was a sponge taking in the history of women's sports from Iowa, from Title IX. Dr. Christine Grant, a great leader there who passed away a few years ago. All of that, the history of women's sports, Lisa Bluter wanted her team to understand and know that. And Caitlin Clark, among all the others, really, really did take that in and learned so much from Lisa Bluter. Jan Jansen, of course, the assistant coach as well. And then Christy Sides, making sure that, get them off social media when things were going crazy and everyone was getting attacked. Christy Sides leading that team to the playoffs, 20-20 record, amazing comeback in the second half after the Olympics. And then those last games and into the playoffs with Caitlin Clark and managing, just as she said, the atomic bomb that had landed, there's such an unusual situation for the Indiana Fever, for the WNBA. Christy Sides did a terrific job of handling that and would probably still be the coach, my opinion, if it weren't for the fact that Stephanie White was available. And Stephanie White from Indiana played at Purdue, Indiana Fever coaching, and then coming back to coach again. So that's, I know Steph White, and she's just a terrific basketball mind, a great announcer, and then also a great coach. So anyway, yeah, I think that hopefully covers most of them, but they were all terrific and all wonderful to talk to for the book.